The impact that artificial intelligence is having on art is very interesting to me to consider and talk about and ponder and research. Over the last year, we have all watched as the rise of AI has become increasingly more dramatic, increasingly more intense. It's really come and been disruptive, I think, in a lot of ways, on a lot of levels, in a lot of different industries, and art is one of the primary places that we're seeing impact, or at least expecting to see impact. And the question, I think, on many people's minds is art in danger? Is visual art like photography and painting and creating graphic design and things like that in danger? Is content creation in danger? Is the art of the novel, is the art of poetry in danger? These questions are worth exploring, I think, and they've been on my mind, especially since I finished reading Western Lane by Chetna Maru, shortlisted for the Booker Prize this year. The real question I think that this line of thinking ultimately results in is, what is art? What is art is a really important question, especially as we're trying to determine whether or not art is in danger. In Chetna Maru's debut novel, Western Lane, she has a very distinct style that she approaches writing this story with, and it's something that I liken to the poetry of Billy Collins. What she's able to do is, after a few paragraphs of setting the stage and kind of building the emotion of characters or directing the plot where it's going, developing characters, how she develops them, she ends up distilling the last few paragraphs down into this concise, emotive few sentences. And it's very similar to how Billy Collins architects a poem. Reading a Billy Collins poem is enjoyable in the way he is wielding language and architecting imagery and things like that, and demonstrating creative uses of metaphor. But there's always this resolving ending to a Billy Collins poem that kind of distills everything down into this moment of clarity, this moment of delight, this moment of resolve, this moment of rest and completion. And I saw the same thing in Chetna Maru's work, and what it caused me to think is, I wonder if there's a way to train an AI model to use that device in its output. And so I started creating an application where I could try to do this. Now, I work with data and I work with AI in my vocation, in my normal day-to-day work. That is something that I leverage and that I build. And so this was pretty quick and easy for me to spin up. And the implications of what I've built here are further reaching than what I will demonstrate today. I wanted to see, can I get a model to write like these authors? So what I did is, and I'll show you the code here just so you have a visual of what I'm talking about. It's a little bit messy, but what I did is I passed the model the excerpts for each of the authors, and this includes the long-listed authors, though we won't demonstrate any of those today. The excerpts that exist on Booker's website, I passed those excerpts into these objects, and then I'm training the model to, before it answers, to read this excerpt and answer me in the style of writing of this excerpt. Now, the excerpts on the Booker website are pretty long, as you can see, just looking at Sarah Bernstein's excerpt, pretty long. They're all fairly long. Jonathan Escoffery, some of it goes this way. It's a little bit messy, as I said. But these excerpts, the idea was, let's pass the large language model an example and see if it can replicate the writing of that author. And so why don't we just run an example here. We'll do it on Chetna Maru, who wrote Western Lane, a book I was very impressed with, and I'm very happy made the shortlist. And I really hope wins the entire prize because the book is just that beautiful to me. But what we're going to do is see if the large language model can take an excerpt and can output something similar in the same style. So write like Chetna Maru is what we're telling the large language model to do. Okay, so the output here is just a paragraph. The air felt heavy and oppressive, and the smell of decomposing food lingered in the streets. Our Aunt Ranjan had scolded Kush for wearing her hair loose in the kitchen, and then she had turned to me and pulled up half of the white cloth and put newspapers down so I wouldn't get juice on her new dining set. I could see the dark golden balls of gulab jamun that had been prepared earlier that morning, but Aunt Ranjan blocked my view and said that we were wild. Pa sat there silently, and it was Uncle Pavan who stepped in to tell us a story about when Pa had announced he was getting married, and the look on our grandfather's face. It was a moment of deliverance, and I knew that no matter what happened, we would always have each other. Okay, not too bad. It's obviously pulling in some of the same characters that exist in the excerpt. Aunt Ranjan is in here, Pa is here, Uncle Pavan is here, Gulab Jamun is here. And this is more or less a summary in the same style of Chetna Maru's writing of the excerpt that was passed. So the AI, the large language model, is not getting too creative with it. It's not coming up with something brand new out of its imagination. It's taking what it has and demonstrating that it can replicate a similar thing using the patterns that it saw. So what if we pass the large language model the excerpts that Chetna Maru has on the Booker website, and then we ask it to write about something in particular, something completely random that doesn't exist in Western Lane, that Chetna Maru has never written about. For example, eating a marshmallow in the middle of a mosh pit. Let's see what the large language model does with this. It's thinking. Okay, so this is hilarious that it starts this way, because the beginning of Western Lane starts with a similar concept. I think that the excerpt in Western Lane is, I don't know if you have ever stood in the middle of a squash court on the tee and listened to what is going on next door. And here, the large language model starts the same way. I don't know if you have ever stood in the middle of a mosh pit amidst the jumping, thrashing bodies and eaten a marshmallow. It's a strange sensation, the sweetness of the marshmallow cutting through the sweat and the heat and the thundering music. What I'm thinking of is the sound from the next court of a ball hit clean and hard. It's a quick, low pistol shot of a sound with a close echo. Okay. I remember the first time I did it. I was at a punk show, and I had been pushed to the center of the pit. I was exhausted, my legs shaking, and I felt like I was going to fall. That was when I saw it, a marshmallow resting at the feet of a mosher. I picked it up, and in that moment of stillness, I felt the crowd around me pause as if they were all waiting for me to take a bite. I raised the marshmallow to my lips, and with a feeling of being rescued, I took a bite. The crowd erupted around me, and I was surrounded by a steady, thunderous rhythm of bodies and music. I felt the sweetness of the marshmallow on my tongue and the heat of the crowd on my skin. It was a strange and beautiful moment, and I will never forget it. Now, to me, this is sounding very much like Western Lane. The writing has a distinct emotive feeling. The writing is not depending on adjectives and hyperbolic language to move each sentence along and to say something, profound or evocative, but it does use descriptive language. But I think Chetna Maru leverages descriptive language very precisely and does it very well, and I really appreciate that. did not have the same experience reading Paul Harding's book, This Other Eden. And we can see how the large language model can replicate Paul Harding's work. I'm going to refresh and just start from the beginning here. Paul Harding, let's see, write like Paul Harding, large language model, write like Paul Harding, AI. So again, we're passing the large language model the excerpt that is on the Booker website. Where is it? Paul Harding. And it's early in the story when the hurricane strikes Benjamin and Patience Honey. But let's see what the large language model does. The sky was a roiling mass of clouds, lightning flashing and thunder rumbling like a warning from the heavens. Sounds like Paul Harding. The sea was churning, the waves crashing against the shore, and the wind was howling as if the world were about to come to an end. Patience Honey, standing in the middle of this maelstrom, was determined to hold on to the last shred of hope, her homemade flag, no matter what. She held it up as high as she could, her arms shaking with the effort, and the wind whipped it around, tearing it from her grasp. But she held on, and when the water rose up to her neck, she held the flag up as a beacon of hope, a sign that no matter what happened, she and her family would survive. When the water finally stopped rising, the flag was still there, a testament to the courage and determination of the Honey family, and a reminder that no matter how dark the storm, there's always a glimmer of light. Okay, so again, the AI large language model is taking the excerpts and essentially it's summarizing it, but it's summarizing it in Paul Harding's voice. So it's a step beyond just summarizing because it's still giving it to us in the descriptive language. It sounds like Paul Harding's writing. It's very in your face. It's very dependent on adjective, dependent on exaggeration, really, and he's pushing along the intensity of this moment with those big words, and also even the fact that the large language model uses the word maelstrom, like Paul Harding throughout his novel was constantly dropping words that you would have to look up almost just for the sake of doing it, it seemed. This guy is teaching creative writing at some university, though. I'm not going to get too harsh with you, Paul. Relax. So here we have essentially a summary. But let's give the large language model the same prompt that we gave it for Chetna Maru to see how Paul Harding would write about eating a marshmallow in the middle of a mosh pit. A marshmallow in the middle of a mosh pit. Let's see what happens with this. The marshmallow was a beacon of sweetness, a soft, sugary solace amidst the cacophony of the mosh pit. So Paul Harding. The sticky confection glowed like a beacon in the midst of the chaos, its white fluffiness a stark contrast to the dark, frenetic energy of the crowd. It felt like a moment of stillness, a moment of respite in the midst of the maelstrom, as if time had stopped and all that was left was the marshmallow, suspended in a pocket of calm amidst the madness. I savored the moment, savoring the sweetness of the marshmallow, as I felt the energy of the mosh pit swirling around me, the sound of the music and the crowd a distant roar. All that mattered in that moment was the marshmallow, its sweetness, a soothing balm to my soul. Okay, so we're seeing AI take an excerpt from an author and demonstrate that it can find and figure out the patterns that are in these excerpts and incorporate them into a whole new prompt to write about something that the author has never written about and sound very similar to at least the way Paul Harding writes in This Other Eden and the way Chetna Maru writes in Western Lane. Is it perfect? No. But in just a few short lines of code, it's not much here, we're able to do that. So the question is, what does this mean for art? And I think that the conversation has to come back again to what art is. What is art? Is it the ability to write in these ways that these distinguished authors, these authors that are up for awards can write, or is it something deeper? And I tend to gravitate towards the concept that it's something deeper. Even human artists cannibalize other human artists. U2 has a song where they say, every artist is a cannibal, every poet is a thief, they kill their inspiration and sing about their grief. So this idea that everything that I do that's of an artistic impulse has been influenced by my experiences, has been influenced by what I've input in terms of what I've read, what I've listened to, what I've watched, what I've heard, what I've tasted and touched and seen. I think if you take it a step even deeper and you consider whether or not a human without any outside stimulus, without any outside inspiration or other artists, other human inspiring them to do the same thing or attempt the same thing, that a human would still be able to create out of their imagination. Even if a person was all alone, stranded on an island and raised without ever seeing another person, you can imagine out of the strength and the robustness of the human spirit that art would come. Just because art to me is so human. It is such a human impulse to see a deer and try to draw it, to see and sense sadness in the bend of a deer's neck as it lowers its head to drink from a stream, and try to create and capture that and be able to look at that and have the same emotions evoked from you. There's something about art that is different than just replication. It's the ability for something to spontaneously happen outside of the fullness and robustness of the human spirit. And that's something that AI can't do right now. It might be able to at some point. These large language models and the power and accuracy and impressive nature of these AI infrastructures are only going to become exponentially more powerful and exponentially more creative, for lack of a better term. But as of now, today, when I hear Chetna Maru talking about how she wrote Western Lane and how the idea came to her when she was in a squash court and suddenly she just knew that it was a story about a young girl and her two sisters who had just lost their mother, and squash would play this role of healing and of examining human grief and loss and rebuilding after loss. That's something spontaneous that formed in Chetna Maru's mind that snowballed into Western Lane, and I'm so glad it did. That's not something that we see an AI capable of doing today. What is art? What do you think art is? And do you think that we are in danger of losing it? Or are we more in danger of losing our ability to discern what art is? If you have something that you'd like to see me ask the writers to write about, put it in the comments below. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed the discussion. Western Lane, to me, was profound, beautiful. I think Chetna Maru did a wonderful job on her debut novel. I was very impressed, and I think about it all the time. I'm a sucker for a story that explores grief in an indirect way, and I'm also a sucker for a coming-of-age story that explores what it is, just complex human experience through teenage years. That's why I'm drawn to the Newbery Medal books. There's so much talk about artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, large language models destroying art. We're living at a time where a computer can generate an image of an oil painting in seconds. A large language model can generate an entire epilogue or chapter for a novel in a matter of seconds. Can't help but wonder what the impact is on art, what the impact is on human expression. Where does that leave us?